Hey, first grade, this is Miss Becky. Today we're going to be doing our Bible lesson 6.4. And so far we've talked about Joseph as he was a dreamer, when he was in prison. And then yesterday we talked about how Joseph helped save Egypt when he interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams and he supplied food for the famine. Well, today the focus of our lesson is Joseph forgives his brothers. So, in this picture, before we start, this person right here, that is actually Joseph. And he's dressed like an Egyptian, remember, because he's now lived here for many years. And all of those people there at the table, those are his brothers. Okay. So, I want you to listen to the lesson today, and we're going to hear about how God used all the bad things that happened to Joseph for good. Okay? So here's the story. When Joseph's brothers reached Canaan, they told their father Jacob what had happened to them. This included how Simeon had to stay in prison, remember, until they brought their youngest brother back to Egypt. Jacob, the dad, he originally said no. He wasn't going to let his youngest and his 12th son Benjamin go to Egypt during the famine. He feared that he would never see him again, because remember what had happened with Joseph. He felt like he lost him years ago. But now there was no choice. Jacob's family had no food, so he let his 10 oldest sons return to Egypt with his youngest brother Benjamin, or Jacob's youngest son Benjamin. And this was also the youngest brother. And when Joseph saw Benjamin with his brothers, he told his servants to go prepare a meal. Simeon, the brother, was released from prison, and all of them were brought to Joseph's house, which is where they are in this picture. And when Joseph entered the room, the brothers bowed down. They still didn't know who Joseph was. So they thought they were bowing down, right, to probably a pharaoh, a very important person, when really, who was it? That's right, it was Joseph. And Joseph asked them, "Is your father well? Is he still alive?" And the brothers replied that he was, and turning to Benjamin, Joseph asked, "Is this the youngest brother you told me about?" Joseph was so happy to see his family, he had to leave the room because he couldn't keep himself from crying. Remember, it had been so many years since he'd seen his family, and now he's seeing them all sitting together at the table. And when Joseph returned to have dinner, he sat by himself at a different table, and he watched his brothers. After dinner, Joseph gave each brother a sack of grain. Remember, they could use grain to make bread and other things. And they rejoiced and they were happy, and they were thinking that all of them would be returning to their father. The brothers did not know it, but Joseph was testing them. So listen carefully to what he did. Joseph had a servant hide his silver special cup in Benjamin's sack of grain. He wanted to see if the older brothers cared enough to protect and defend their youngest brother. So remember, boys and girls, the youngest brother did not steal the silver cup, but Joseph was testing them because he put the silver cup in the youngest brother's sack of grain so that when he got caught, he was going to see if the other brothers would protect him. So in the morning, when they had traveled out of the city, Joseph sent servants after them to search their belongings in their bags and to arrest them as thieves. And Joseph said, "You robbed me, you terrible men. The young man who had the cup in his sack, he will be my slave, and the rest of you go home." But Judah begged, "Oh, please, our father is very old, and he will die of sadness if Benjamin does not return to him. I promised our dad that Benjamin would be returned safely. Please let me take Benjamin's place." And from Judah's response, Joseph was sure that his brothers had changed. Joseph sent his servants away, and he spoke to his brothers. He said, "I am Joseph, whom you sold as a slave years ago. That was a very wrong thing to do, but God sent me here to save your lives and the lives of many others during this famine. Hurry to my father. Tell him that I am alive, and I want you to bring my father, Jacob, back here to Egypt. All of you, bring your families, your flocks, the herds." And then Joseph hugged them and he cried for joy. Well, the brothers hurried home and they told their father Jacob that Joseph was still alive and that he was now a ruler in Egypt. And joyfully Jacob said, "I will go with you to Egypt to see my son." And Jacob offered a sacrifice to God, and God spoke to him. And he said, "I am your God and the God of your father. Don't be afraid to go to Egypt. I will bless your family there. And then I will bring your descendants back to Canaan, and someday your children will be as many as the sands of the sea." This was the same promise, remember, that God had spoken to Abraham and Isaac. Remember when we talked about Abraham and Isaac? God made that same promise. And God gave Jacob and Joseph many more years together. And Jacob's family lived in Egypt, and his family, the children of Israel, grew and grew and grew. So, pretty amazing story, right? Out of all the bad things that we saw happen this week in our Bible truths, God brought it all and made it for good, which is pretty amazing. So, why do you think, boys and girls, that Joseph was able to forgive his brothers? Well, he knew that they were sorry for their sin. Remember how they ended up protecting the youngest brother Benjamin when he was caught with the silver cup in his bag? They were going to take his place because they wanted him to be able to return home. So that's when he knew. That's how he tested his brothers. And Joseph told his brothers, boys and girls, that they did an evil thing years ago when they sold him, but that God had used it for what? Good. And can you tell your mom or dad, how did God bring good from the evil that his brothers had done? This one's kind of tricky. The answer is God sent Joseph to Egypt to save his family, and he also was able to save many lives during the famine. Okay? And what did Joseph want his family to do? After they learned who he was, he told them to what? Yeah, he told them to move to Egypt. Get all your herds, your flocks, family, and come and live here. And what did God promise Jacob? It was the same kind of thing that he promised to Abraham and Isaac. He promised that he was Jacob's God and father, and don't be afraid. He said, "I want you to go, move to Egypt, and someday your children will be as many as the sands of the sea." It's incredible, isn't it? So, boys and girls, this is our last Bible lesson for this week. Today in your Bible workbook, it's page 24, lesson 6.4, but you don't have to write anything for this workbook page, okay? You just read, there's 3 little stories that you're going to read, and I want you to discuss what those children should do with your parents. You don't have to write anything down for today's workbook page. I can't wait to see you. Hopefully we will see you soon, and I miss you, and can't wait to hear your Bible verse. Hopefully you can send your Bible verse to me on Friday so I can see or hear you saying it. Bye.